So Dad, and that was his job, that was his source of income, was working for Cedar Tex at the mill. He used all his experience and his skills that he'd gained in the mill at Eddie BC and working there. So the mill, Cedar Tex, was no longer operating, and so he went and bought a little giant sawmill, a little two-man outfit, and moved it out, set it up at up Jameson Road right at the end there, and then that's when we sold the house in Calgary, and that's when we moved out. So that would have been 1950, 51, 52. We would have been out in Jameson Road. It was quite a transition for Mum and all of us, because we'd come from Calgary, Kensington Road, a big two-story house down there on 1808 Bowness Road. You know, indoor plumbing and power, telephone, all the amenities of living in an urban area, to Jameson Road. It was basically just a shack, you know, a tar paper shack, outdoor biffies. Dad hung pointers and setters on the door, and they were about 20 yards out behind the house. No power, coal oil lamps, an old coal wood burning furnace in the basement. You know, and I can remember as a kid going down and throwing some lumps of coal on it at night in the wintertime before you went to bed, so there was some heat all night. Burnt wood during the day and coal at night. And there was a pump house, and Mom always said we had running water as long as I ran to the pump house and got it. You know, so we had running water, and so it was quite a shock for Donna and I and David. This must have been 1954, because David was just a newborn, a little guy, and it was quite a shock for us. Quite an adjustment for us. Mum cooking on a wood stove, you know, those old wood stoves with the warming ovens up above, and the only hot water we had was when I put it in the reservoir on the side of the stove, you know, and heated during the day, and I'd get up in the morning. I still remember getting up in the morning and going out, and the water buckets would be frozen, you know, the drinking buckets, and we had a dipper in there. And anyway, that was the early days on Jameson Road.
So how did you get to school?
Well, Larry Williams, hired man, drove the school bus. Eventually, Dad took over the bus route and drove the school bus all the way down Jameson Road to the 1A highway and then into Cochrane. It was the longest route, and in those days it was the Calgary Rural School Division. Became Rocky View much later. But he drove it was the longest route in. It took us almost an hour picking up kids all along Jameson Road and on into Cochrane. And actually, trying to remember, I think it was Hamish Begg drove the bus from up here.
Yes. And
so the bus would come down the Forestry Road here to the 1A, and Dad would come down Jameson Road and stop, pick up the kids at the Colemans at Harry Coleman at the dam, and then down and pick up all the students that came down from up here on the north side of the Ghost, down and then on into Cochrane. And it was about an hour in, an hour out. And of course the Gibson kids, we were the first on, last off. So I riding that bus. And the Allens, Bob and Anna Allen. So when Dad brought the little giant sawmill out there, needed a crew to work, do the logging, and run the mill. So Bob and Anna moved out from Cochrane, or from Calgary, pardon me, and they had 12 kids. Wow. And they moved into the house just up the road from us, but halfway between Larry and Williams' place and our place. And Bob built a house, and so then we used to. Well, the joke was the bus was empty until we stopped at Allen's, and all 12 kids got on. So there was Sylvia, Linda, Bob and Ken, and Jamie and Jewel, the two kids, the twins, Deanne and Diane Allen. And so the bus filled up pretty quickly. Then on down, and there was Doug and Doug Kowalchuk and his brother, the older boy. Anyway, the Kowalchuks were at Larry Williams. And then on down, and we picked up, well, I think that was it for Jameson Road. The Gibsons, the Allens, and the Kowalchuks. And then we were down to the 1A, and then the Colemans at the dam, and on into Cochrane. So Dad needed some. Bob and Anna came out, and Bob worked with Dad on the mill and logging. And he had a crew of about there was in the bunkhouse 2 or 3 guys that I remember, hired men that worked in the winter.
Some of the neighbors.
Some of the neighbors. So that was Doug Richards and Johnny Wasson. I remember one winter, started in the fall, and I think it was the winter John graduated from high school, because I think he needed money to go to university, and Doug just needed money. I think he was starting his rodeo career and needed money, so he hired Doug and John to log, and they spent the whole winter living in our bunkhouse, Mom feeding them, and they were logging in the winter. I would get on I was a little younger, and I was still going to school, so I'd get on the school bus in the morning and head off to school, and John and Doug would go down into the bush and log all day. Well, they piled up mountains of skidways with logs, 8, 10, 12-foot logs, and then haul them up to the mill and saw them. And I got a picture. There's some of the loads of lumber that came off of that little giant sawmill.
It wouldn't be the same truck he drove out?
No, there's the truck. When Dad bought House Brothers Lumberyard in Cochrane, Dad and David ran House Brothers Lumberyard remember I told you Dad had 18, 20 vocations in his lifetime, and that was the 1953 Ford 4-ton, and then that was the log truck. And Dad would haul about once or twice a week, there'd be a load of lumber going into Calgary from that little giant sawmill. Used to laugh at a story about Doug living in our bunkhouse up there, and it was just another tar paper shack, but and in the wintertime we had an old dog, Prince, collie dog, and Doug, they had a big heater in the bunkhouse, but of course it would go out during the night. I went over there several mornings. Doug will never admit to this, but to stay warm, he would open the bunkhouse door at night and call Prince, and Prince would come into the bunkhouse. And several mornings I would go over and I'd find Doug and the dog all curled up in their sleeping bag. Doug, what are you doing? He says he keeps me warm at night. So he'd have this great big collie dog. I remember Brent. I said, I don't know how you stood his breath, but anyway, Doug was quite a character. But he stayed warm at night in the wintertime with sleeping in his sleeping bag with Prince the dog.